The Zylathi Empire didn't conquer planets with fleets. They used the Silver Mist, a biological weapon designed to rewrite DNA and paralyze nervous systems in hours. When the canister fell into a human metropolis, the Galactic Council prepared memorials for Earth, but something went wrong. Instead of piles of bodies, sensors detected humans buying tissues and complaining about a bad flu. What happens when the deadliest weapon in the universe meets an immune system forged in a death world? Stay until the end and discover why the galaxy now fears our sneeze. Admiral Krell watched the hologram of Earth with the icy patience of a predator who already knows the outcome of the hunt. Around him, on the bridge of the flagship Silver Shadow, Zylathi officers monitored atmospheric dispersal levels. They were an elegant species, with translucent skin and minds connected by a neural network of absolute efficiency. For them, war wasn't about explosions or glory. It was about biology. They didn't waste ammunition when they could simply send a superior genetic code to correct inferior species. The Silver Mist was their ultimate triumph, a synthetic pathogen, a biological nanomachine that entered through the respiratory tract, hijacked mitochondria, and turned off the host like snuffing out a lantern. They had subjugated 12 star systems with this same strain. No living being, from gas giants to ice predators, had survived more than 6 hours after initial contact. Full dispersal in the Northern Hemisphere, sector designated as North America, reported Science Director Thao, his long fingers sliding over the light console. The pathogen is already replicating. We estimate muscular paralysis will begin in 13 terrestrial minutes. Collective brain death will occur in approximately 4 hours. It is a fertile world, Admiral. The infrastructure will remain intact for our colonization. Krell merely nodded in a gesture of minimal approval. He was already thinking about the next planet. Humans were a noisy, disorganized species, and above all, biologically primitive. They had no exoskeletons, no venom glands, and their medical technology still relied on physical cuts and basic chemical substances. They were perfect targets. However, something strange began to appear on the deep scan monitors. The mortality graph, which should have been a vertical line climbing toward total extermination, remained horizontal. "Thou, check the biosignature sensors," Krell ordered, his voice vibrating with a hint of doubt, rarely heard on a Zylathi ship. Was there an error in the release? Was the canister intercepted? Thao narrowed what remained of his eyebrows. "Negative, Admiral. The payload was delivered to the center of a dense urban cluster called New York. The pathogen is present in the air. The humans are breathing it, millions of them." They zoomed in on thermal images and surveillance feeds hacked from local networks. What they saw made no sense. According to Zylathi mathematical models, the streets should have been covered with motionless bodies. Instead, human chaos continued. "They are moving," Thao whispered. "Increase audio and biochemical analysis of the specimens near the surface sensors," Krell commanded. What followed was a sound that the galaxy rarely associated with a biological apocalypse: a sneeze. Then another, and then the sound of someone blowing their nose with vigor. The biochemical analysis on the screen began to flash red. "Admiral, this is impossible," Thao said, his voice trembling for the first time. The pathogen entered the system of a male human specimen, identified as an office unit. Our nanomachines began the attack on the lung cells, but they were immediately surrounded by I don't know how to describe this. It's an army of white cells, but they aren't just trying to isolate the virus. They are devouring it. Aggressively, disproportionately. This human's immune system is treating our Omega-class biological weapon as if it were an irritating dust particle." Krell approached the screen. "Explain. How can a level 2 species resist the mist?" Thao adjusted the parameters. "We underestimated their world of origin, Admiral. Earth is not just a garden world. It is a microbiological death world. These humans evolved in a soup of carnivorous bacteria, mutant viruses, and parasitic fungi. Their immune system isn't a shield, it's a meat grinder. They spend their entire lives being attacked by pathogens that would melt a Xylathi in seconds. To the human body, our biological weapon is just a common Tuesday. On the screen, the human in New York wiped his nose, complained to a colleague about these damn seasonal allergies, and continued typing on his computer. He wasn't dying. He was annoyed. He had a slight headache. The Xylathi pathogen, designed to be the end of a civilization, was being processed, disassembled, and expelled through human mucus like irrelevant biological waste. Krell felt a chill run down his translucent spine. If humans could ignore death in the form of mist, what else could they ignore? Admiral Krell stood paralyzed as he watched the data streams. On Earth, the silver mist was spreading as planned, but the expected silence wasn't following in its wake. Instead, the humans were getting louder. "Director Thau, I need a molecular breakdown of the interaction," Krell barked, his voice thin with a tension his crew had never witnessed. "Why aren't they collapsing?" Thau's many fingers danced over the holographic interface, pulling up a 3D rendering of a human T-cell engaging with a Xylathi nanovirus. The visual was horrifying to the Xylathi onlookers. Their sophisticated bioweapon, designed with sleek, crystalline structures to bypass cellular security, was being physically torn apart. The human immune cells weren't just identifying the threat. They were swarming it with a primitive, chaotic violence. "Almirante," Thau whispered, "the human immune system doesn't operate on logic or elegance. It operates on total war. Look here. When our virus attempts to dock with a cell, the human body responds by spiking its internal temperature. They call it a fever. They are literally trying to cook our weapon inside their own veins. They are willing to damage their own proteins just to ensure our virus cannot replicate." Krell watched as the thermal scans of New York turned a deeper shade of orange. "They are overheating themselves on purpose?" "Yes," Thau replied, his face pale. "And that's not the worst part. Look at the chemistry of their respiratory secretions. They are producing massive amounts of thick, viscous fluids, mucus. They are physically trapping our nanomachines in a layer of biological sludge, and then they are ejecting them with force." On the main screen, a human woman sat on a park bench. She let out a massive chest-racking cough into a paper tissue, then looked at the tissue with a grimace of annoyance. She reached into a bag, pulled out a small plastic bottle labeled Dayquil, and took a swig. "What is that substance?" Krell demanded. "A counter-agent? Did the Galactic Council leak the cure? Scanning?" "No," Thau said, stunned. "It's a primitive mixture of mild sedatives and fever suppressants. It doesn't even fight the virus. It just helps the human ignore the discomfort while their body continues the slaughter. They aren't even treating this as a war, Almirante. They are treating it as a nuisance. They are going to their places of work while carrying enough of our bioweapon to kill an entire Xylathi colony, simply because they don't have enough sick days." The bridge of the Silver Shadow fell into a heavy silence. The Xylathi culture was built on harmony and biological perfection. To them, a virus was a masterpiece of engineering. To the humans, it was apparently just something to be coughed into a sleeve and forgotten. "We need to increase the dosage," Krell said, though his heart wasn't in it. "Release the secondary strain, the one that targets the nervous system directly. If we cannot stop their hearts, we will stop their minds." "Activating Phase 2, Thau announced. From the orbital pods, a darker, more concentrated version of the mist was released over London, Tokyo, and Moscow. This strain was designed to cross the blood-brain barrier and cause immediate, permanent catatonia. The Xylathi waited. They watched the screens, hoping for the moment the humans would finally drop, for the moment the primitive world would fall quiet. In London, a man walking a small, four-legged creature stopped. He rubbed his temples. He blinked. The Xylathi crew leaned in. This was it. The neural collapse was beginning. The man sat down on a stone wall, reached into a pocket, and pulled out a small, foil-wrapped cylinder. He unwrapped it, a chocolate bar, and began to eat. He's consuming glucose, Krell asked, bewildered. The neural strain is causing a minor spike in his metabolic demand, Thao analyzed, his voice cracking. His body signaled a need for energy. He responded by eating a high-calorie snack. Almirante, his brain isn't shutting down, it's adapting. His neurotransmitters are simply pushing the virus aside. His synaptic pathways are so used to dealing with chemical interference, caffeine, nicotine, processed sugars, that our neural disruptor is being treated like a mild case of brain fog. The man in London stood up, whistled for his animal, and continued his walk. "Almirante!" a junior officer shouted from the sensory array. "New data from the surface. The humans, they are starting to produce antibodies, massive amounts of them, at a rate that shouldn't be biologically possible." Fithau looked at the projections and his eyes widened. "It's the memory cells. The human body is recording the structure of our weapon. They aren't just killing it anymore. They are learning it. If we don't withdraw the mist now, their bodies will become a living factory for the cure. Within 48 hours, any human who survived will be completely immune. And if they ever share their blood with the rest of the galaxy, they will become the ultimate shield." Krell finished the thought, a cold dread settling in his gut. The Xylathi had come to Earth to turn it into a graveyard. Instead, they were accidentally training the most aggressive immune system in the universe to hunt them. Admiral Krell's hand trembled, a biological impossibility for a Xylathi, as he stared at the global heat maps. The silver mist was no longer a weapon. It was becoming an environmental factor. In the high command chamber of the Silver Shadow, the air was thick with a sense of impending disaster. "Status report," Krell whispered, his voice cracking like dry parchment. "Tell me we have found a weakness. Tell me their cellular walls are finally giving way." Director Thao didn't look up from his monitors. His movements were frantic. "It's getting worse, Admiral. The humans have moved from passive resistance to active countermeasures, but they aren't using labs or high-tech synthesizers. They are using traditional home remedies." Thao projected a video feed from a suburban home in a place called Minnesota. A human female was standing over a boiling pot, stirring a thick yellow liquid. She is preparing a concoction of allium sativum and Zingiber officinale, garlic and ginger. Our sensors show that the aromatic compounds she is releasing into the air are actually destabilizing the mist's molecular bonds before it even enters her lungs. They are literally cooking our bioweapon out of the atmosphere with their soup. "Soup?" Krell roared, slamming his fist against the command console. "We spent 3 centuries perfecting the silver mist. It is the pinnacle of nanobiotechnology. And you are telling me it's being defeated by a grandmother's recipe? It's the psychological profile that is the most disturbing, sir," Thao continued, ignoring the Admiral's outburst. "Look at the global communications network. They aren't broadcasting pleas for mercy or evacuation orders. They are sharing memes. They are making jokes about the alien flu. They have already categorized our existential threat as a minor inconvenience. There is a viral video of a human male in a gym who is breathing in a high concentration of the mist while lifting heavy metal weights. He claims the extra thickness in the air is helping his cardio training." Krell felt a wave of nausea. This was the ultimate insult. His species viewed themselves as the gardeners of the galaxy, the ones who decided who lived and who died through the elegance of the gene. To be treated as a minor flu by a bunch of sweating, soup-drinking primates was unbearable. "If the mist won't kill them, we will use the Black Thorn protocol, activate the parasitic spores, let them see how their immune system handles a multicellular invader that eats from the inside out." Thao hesitated. "Admiral, the Black Thorn was designed for sterile environments. Earth is messy. The sheer amount of competing organisms on that planet is—" "Do it!" Krell commanded. The orbital pod shifted, launching a second wave. These weren't microscopic particles, but specialized, bioengineered spores. Once inhaled, they would take root in the digestive tract, absorbing nutrients and growing into a network of thorns that would eventually rupture the host. It was a slow, agonizing death. 3 hours passed. The Zelathi crew watched the monitors with bated breath. This time, there were no sneezes, no runny noses. The sensors showed the spores reaching the stomachs of millions of humans. "Success!" Thao shouted. "The spores have landed. They are beginning to germinate in the acidic environment of the human stomach. Wait, something is wrong." The biochemical readouts began to spike in a way Thao had never seen. "The human stomach acid, it's too strong. It's Nivel 1 acidity. It's like a vat of industrial solvent. Our spores were designed to survive a pH of 4.0. The humans are at a constant 1.5 to 2.0. They aren't being infected. They are digesting the black thorn." Krell watched in horror as the data confirmed the nightmare. "They are eating our parasites?" "Not just eating them, Admiral," Thao said, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper. "Because the spores are rich in proteins and complex carbohydrates, the human digestive system is breaking them down and using them as fuel. In some regions, humans are reporting a sudden boost in energy after the second wave of the mist. They think the government has released a new type of vitamin-enriched air. There are reports of people going for long runs because they feel unusually refreshed." The bridge went silent. The Zelathi had sent two of the most feared biological weapons in the known universe to Earth. The first was treated like a common cold. The second was being served as a nutritional supplement. "Admiral," a junior officer called out from the back of the bridge, "we have a problem, a real problem. The Human Center for Disease Control has just isolated a sample of the mist from a patient in Atlanta. They've mapped our entire genetic sequence." "And?" Krell asked, fearing the answer. "And they just posted it on a public forum called Reddit. They've identified the Zelathi signature. They've also found a flaw in our own biological encoding, a backdoor we use for our own immunity. Admiral, they aren't just immune now. They are figuring out how to weaponize it back at us. The humans are calling it Project Uno Reverse." Krell collapsed into his command chair. The hunters had become the prey. The humans hadn't just survived, they had found the Zelathi's off switch and were currently laughing about it on the internet. The bridge of the Silver Shadow was no longer a place of clinical efficiency. It was a chamber of whispers and frantic calculations. Admiral Krell paced the command deck, his translucent skin now mottled with a sickly grey hue, a sign of extreme Zelathi stress. "How did they find the back door?" he hissed, staring at the scrolling data from the human forums. "That encryption was based on Zelathi DNA sequences. It shouldn't be readable by a level 2 civilization." Director Thao looked like he hadn't slept in cycles. "They didn't decrypt it in the traditional sense, Admiral. They used something called distributed computing. Millions of human gamers and bored office workers volunteered their home computers to run simulations. They treated our genetic security like a boss fight in a video game. They cracked 3 centuries of Zelathi bioengineering in 18 hours because they wanted to see who could do it fastest for internet points." Krell felt a hollow sensation in his chest. "And Project Uno Reverse? What is the status?" "It's not a single project, sir," Thao said, his voice trembling. "It's a global biological mobilization. The humans have realized that our silver mist is made of programmable protein chains. They are currently using CRISPR technology, a tool they used to use for basic gene editing, to reprogram the mist still floating in their atmosphere. They aren't trying to get rid of it anymore. They are turning it into a delivery system." "A delivery system for what?" Krell demanded. "Vaccines," Thao whispered in horror, "and vitamins, and caffeine. They have turned our ultimate weapon into a global airborne health supplement. Anyone who breathes the mist now isn't dying. They are receiving a perfect dose of vitamin C and a mild stimulant. But that's not the problem. The problem is the data package they attach to the proteins." Thao hit a button and a new map appeared. It showed the silver mist moving upwards, caught in the thermal currents, heading toward the upper atmosphere. They've encoded a message into the very atoms of the mist, a message directed at us. Our sensors are picking it up now. It's broadcasting on every Zelathi frequency. Krell looked at the translation on his screen. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a single sentence written in the slang of the digital age. L plus, ratio plus, your bioweapon tastes like strawberries. They are mocking us. Krell breathed, his eyes wide. While we plan their extinction, they are laughing at the flavor of our genocide. Admiral, a sensor technician shouted, incoming projectile, small, high velocity, coming from the surface. It's not a missile, it's a civilian satellite. Intercept it, Krell ordered. We can't. It's not an attack. It's a broadcast burst. Suddenly, every screen on the Silver Shadow flickered. The neural link that connected the Xylathi crew, the very foundation of their society, was hit by a massive surge of data. It wasn't a virus in the biological sense, but a mimetic one. Images of small, furry Earth creatures called cats began to flood the Xylathi neural network. Confusing captions like, "Icon has cheeseburger" and "I am soon" filled the minds of the elite Xylathi officers. The crew began to stagger. The Xylathi mind was built for logic, for cold harmony. It had no defense against absurdist humor. To them, the human memes were like a cognitive flashbang. My head, Thao groaned, clutching his temples. Why is the orange predator sitting in a box? Why is it, if it fits, I sits? It makes no sense. The logic loops. They are tearing my neural pathways. Cut the link, Krell screamed, but it was too late. The humans had used the back door in the Xylathi DNA, the one they discovered during their Reddit session, to upload 10 terabytes of high-definition shitposts directly into the Xylathi command network. Admiral, Thao gasped, fighting through the mental fog of 1,000 Doge memes. We have to leave, now. The humans aren't just resisting us anymore. They are playing with us. They've realized that our technology is vulnerable to their internet culture. If we stay here another hour, they'll have control of the ship's life support. They've already renamed the Silver Shadow to Boaty McBoatface in our internal registry. Krell looked at his hands. He was an admiral of the great Xylathi expansion. He had brought empires to their knees. And now he was losing his mind because he couldn't stop thinking about why a human would put a piece of bread on a cat's head. Prepare for warp, Krell said, defeated. We are leaving this sector. We will mark Earth as a hazard zone, level 10. No, level 12. We tell the Council the planet is uninhabitable. We tell them the atmosphere is toxic. But sir, Thao stammered, the atmosphere isn't toxic. It's actually quite pleasant now that they've added the strawberry scent. It is toxic to our dignity, Krell yelled. Warp now! But as the engines began to hum, a final message appeared on the main view screen. It was a direct video feed from the CDC headquarters in Atlanta. A woman in a white lab coat was holding a captured Xylathi drone. She looked directly into the camera, smiled, and did something that sent a chill through every Xylathi on board. She sneezed, and then she winked. See you soon, neighbors, she said. We've still got some of that soup left if you're feeling under the weather. The Silver Shadow vanished into warp, fleeing the planet they thought was a victim, leaving behind a species that had just turned an apocalypse into a weekend of bedrest and light comedy. The hyperspace outside the Silver Shadow swirled like a blur of distorted light, mirroring the mental chaos still reigning on the bridge. Admiral Krell sat in his command chair, trembling slightly as he tried to purge the image of a cat wearing sunglasses from his mind. The silence on the ship was nearly absolute, broken only by the occasional sob of Director Thao, who was still struggling to comprehend why humans dedicated so much time to creating images of bread shaped like cats. Admiral? A junior officer called out, his voice sounding weak. We've received a wideband transmission from Earth. It's not an attack. It's a media file. The signal is being rebroadcast to the entire Galactic Council. Krell sighed, the defeat weighing on his shoulders like a mountain. Put it on the screen. The image appeared. It was the same scientist from Atlanta, but this time she was in a lecture hall, surrounded by hundreds of other humans. Behind her, a giant screen displayed the genetic map of the Silver Mist, with all its vulnerabilities exposed, detailed in language simple enough for even an alien child to understand. "To our friends in the Zelathi Empire," the woman said, her voice calm and heavy with a terrifying confidence. "You sent us a challenge. We accepted it, processed it, and honestly, we think you could have tried harder. Biology is a language, and you seem to have forgotten how to speak it." She paused, looking directly into the camera, as if she could see Admiral Krell on the other side of the galaxy. "We aren't angry. In fact, we thank you for the vitamin boost. But please, don't send anything else. The next virus you try to use might end up resulting in an intergalactic internet. And I guarantee you aren't prepared for what happens when we start sharing our audio files of babies laughing." The screen cut to a montage. Humans running in gyms, humans cooking, humans laughing at disaster videos, humans living on a planet where the climate, the predators and the diseases tried to kill them every single day, and where, in response, they simply developed vaccines, heating systems, and an impenetrable sense of humor. "You see a weapon," the scientist continued. "We see a system problem to be solved. You see an end. We see an inconvenience. Earth is open for trade, science, and diplomacy, but if you try to correct us again, we won't just return the package. We're going to visit you to teach you how a real immune system is built." The transmission ended with a close-up of her taking a sip of coffee. "Oh, and by the way, the tea you sent us, a bit bitter. We suggest adding some honey next time." The screen went black. The silence on the bridge was so deep, it felt like a vacuum. Krell looked at Thao. "Mark the sector as forbidden. Erase all records that we were ever there. If the council asks, say we found a sterile vacuum. Say there is nothing there but dust." Thao merely nodded, his fingers finally stopping their trembling on the panel. "Yes, Admiral. Sterile vacuum. Nothing to see here." The silver shadow jumped out of hyperspace, far, far away from the solar system. Humanity hadn't even noticed they had almost been extinguished. To them, it was just another work week, another seasonal flu to be ignored, and another chance to drink coffee while watching funny videos online. And back on Earth, in a lab in Atlanta, the scientist turned off the console. She looked at the colleague beside her. "Do you think they got the message?" The colleague shrugged, checking a report on the new vaccine formula based on Zelathi technology. "Probably not. But hey, at least now we have nanorobotic cell regeneration technology to use in our hospitals. Let's call it Project Miracle Cure. They'll never know it was the weapon that tried to kill us." The human smiled, grabbed her coffee, and walked toward the exit. Earth's immune system was stronger than ever, and the galaxy, unbeknownst to them, had just been saved by the fact that humans were too stubborn to die and too busy to realize the universe was trying to end them.